Yes, that's last parameter. So xi is
Okay.
otherwise you need to yeah.
Weird.
No, it's the number of the samples.
Yeah, sorry, the number of size.
The size of the
Well, not really.
you should have all the menu is one. Oh, this is scalar. We don't multiply scalar with the vectors just to use high space. It's just still a vector.
And then we just add that
After the weight is class 0. So it's supposed to like you have and weights. And it's one class parameters. So these are 11 dimensional vectors. Just xi is already one size of 11 dimensional as well. So add them together. Imagine. Yeah, the K is the pattern zero here is just the forward class. Yes, you can just like this way. Updating the logic like this.
Okay. Cool. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you use for backline? Yeah. Like if it's the size of the structure is the same. Well, if you give something structure, right? So that gives you the size of the structure. Have to, you have to like because right now I'm coming in for a lot of checks. I'm guessing that you recommend really? A lot of those are necessary. Yeah. So, what time are you supposed to use? Because that's always in that same structure. Yeah, the time is really. If you look at Jake asked a question about it's like whatever CRC
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Let's start. So we haven't finished the discussion of support vector machines. So you should have enough knowledge to address all the problems in homework 4. So if you haven't started, I would suggest you to start right now. Don't delay until the last minute. So today, our plan is like this. So first, we'll spend a short time to introduce a commonly used strategy to select hyperparameters from model. And so we have seen quite a few learning algorithms so far, right? Perceptrons, SVM. Those kind of algorithms, they contain one or several hyperparameters. And then the problem is that how can we select the best hyperparameter? Can we jointly optimize them with the model parameters? And if not, how can we select that? This is the cross-validation is one of the most common used approaches. And in practice, in the future, if you have a chance to do like data science and data mining jobs, you will often use this. And then I will enter another topic, artificial neural net. Probably the hottest topic in machine learning research, and it's kind of a proxy for artificial intelligence. Although to me it's kind of bubble. But we're gonna discuss what is artificial neural net, what is the core algorithm of artificial neural nets, what is the expressiveness of artificial neural nets, what's the benefit, what is the disadvantage when we use it in practice, what is the concern. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so let's first talk about the cross-validation. So, as I just mentioned, right, we have seen and implemented quite a few learning algorithms. So, very broadly, what makes a model? What makes a machine learning model that can be applied in your prediction task or your data analysis task? To make a model, first, you need to have the training data. If there's no data, you cannot conduct training procedure. You cannot produce the model. That's very important. The second thing is the loss function. So why should we make a loss function? What's the usage of loss function? Let us think about it in a more general picture, right? Don't like trapping the implementation details. Sometimes you need to stand up, right, and look at the whole picture. So what's the usage of loss function?
This is just to make sure that we're actually still
improving.
Yeah.
Okay. So
continuing to have lower and lower error.
yeah. This is the procedure, right? But why should we continue to lower and lower the error? So this continuous procedure represents what? What does it mean? Yeah, model is getting better. So model is getting better implies what?
It was learning.
Yeah, of course. So learning is what? What is learning? I mean, machine learning, not human learning.
Decreasing the training error?
Oh, that's kind of cyclical, right? Of course, we decrease the training error to learn our model, right? But what's the essence of learning procedure? I mean, in the computer science area.
Basically trying to find the best function that maps an input to the desired output.
Yeah. So recall our definition about supervised learning, right? We have like the input space, we have like output space, right? That's a label space, and we want to learn a mapping from input space to the output space, right? So to learn that, we're actually doing a search procedure, right? We have a set of candidates functions. Each function is a mapping from input space from the output space to the output space, right? Among all those candidates, we want to find out the best one. So learning is essentially a search procedure, right? Find out the best one in the hypothesis space. And now, it is a loss function, or sometimes it is referred to as objective function or cost function, guide us to fulfill such kind of search procedure, right? How does this loss function guide us? We're trying to minimize it. When we find out some point, when we find out some model parameters, means that which decrease the loss function or the cost function, we'll find a better model. Right? But that might not be enough. Right? We need to continue to search based on the current model. We jump to the next model, and this updating procedure is usually fulfilled by gradient descent. So that's the usage of loss function. You minimize loss function, you'll fulfill the searching procedure to find out the best model which explain the data or which fit the data. But in addition to the loss function, right, and there are the third component which are also extremely important but usually often ignored. They are called hyperparameters. To see the usage of hyperparameters, right, let us review the SVM, soft SVM again, right? So we will just discuss in the previous lecture. So what is soft SVM? What's the objective function for soft SVM? There's a regulator, right, which is half of the square norm plus a set of summation of set of slack variables, CI, and plus C, multiplied with C, and subject to a set of constraints. What are the constraints? Yeah, first, the slack variables must be non-negative, right? And second, we have the function margin. Sorry. We have the function margin must be no less than 1 minus the slack variable, right? So you need to really know why we introduce slack variables here, right? We want to allow some examples to break into the margin in case that, like, when your data is not linearly separable, you cannot find any separating hyperplane. To relax that situation, we allow some examples to break into the margin or even misclassify. So we minimize this objective function subject to this set of constraints, and with respect to the model parameters WB and this actual variables CI. CI is over all the training examples. So now the question is, what is the hyperparameter? What is the hyperparameter? I heard it, right? See. Here is the hyperparameter. So the problem is that how can we identify the best hyperparameter? Can we jointly ask C with those WB and CI? See, can we modify this optimization problem a little bit directly treat this function as a function of C as well, right? So I jointly optimize WB and all the select variables and this hyperparameter C. Is it doable? Or is it reasonable? An idea? Give me a guess. I mean, I want to know the best C here, right? We know C is hyperparameter. But I'm thinking whether I can optimize C just like we optimize WB and the select variables here. So you can imagine I can like remove this CI and get loss function, right? We get the hinge loss and also the W and also C. Then I compute the subgradient with respect to all those parameters, set them to be 0, and say whether we can find out the optimal state in the meantime. Just a guess.
We don't really have any bounds on C.
No, C is as long as you ensure C is non-negative, it's fine. If you like, you can specifically like add one more constraint such that C must be non-negative, right? The problem is that can we do this? I can even like derive a dual form for this, right? And run some quadratic convex optimization package to jointly estimate WB and C and all of those stuffs, right? Any thoughts about it? Just a guess. You won't deduct. You won't get a great deduct if you give the wrong answer. What's your intuition?
So you're wanting to put C into this as another decision variable for this optimization problem?
Yeah.
Would it just choose C be 0 or something arbitrary like that? If you actually split the optimization problem?
I did.
Get like a trivial solution.
Yeah, why is it a trivial solution? Why is it not reason?
Well, you basically like zeroed out all the slack, so it's not considering anything more. You can pick anything once for the slack variation. If we zeroed out, we're basically recreating the perceptron, just making it more complicated again. Wouldn't that be what we're doing? You just zero out the C.
So all your analysis is reasonable, and yeah, it's good to question this like straightforward idea, right? So the answer is no. Why? We can follow your analysis. Right? So suppose I want to jointly optimize WB, those decision variables, those select variables, as well as the hyperparameter C. Let's see what's the result. Right? What kind of value of C can make this objective function to be minimum? What kind of? I heard it, right? So no matter how you take WB and KCI, right? If you want to optimize this objective function with respect to C, so what's the best value of C? 0, right? Because the summation of these slack variables are just non-negative, right? So if you want to optimize, you want to minimize this objective function, you can simply set C equals to 0. That's it, the best C. But the problem is that, is this 0 value of C really useful or reasonable? We need to recall, right, why we introduced this summation. Right? Why we introduced the summation of over the select variables. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's the motivation for us to introduce the select variable here, right? But then we discussed before why we want to add the square num here. This involves a large margin, right? Add them a summation of the classifier, the select variables.
We also want to minimize the amount of slack that we allow.
Yeah, of course we want to minimize, but why do we want to minimize?
Because we want to few points in this gradient.
Yeah.
So it seems like a trade-off. You think of it as like a family. The number of slack that we.
Yeah. So basically, although I allow the flexibility to make some example to break into the margin, right, to account for the non-linearly separable data, right, but I don't want everybody breaks into the margin. Instead, I want as few examples as possible to break into the margin. I still want to linearly separate the majority of examples. That's why we introduced this summation here. So if you do not if you do not add this term here, and what will happen? You can say if you have like positive here, and negative here, and negative here, negative here, right? You can just make your margin to be like this, right? You can make all of the examples break into margin. Your classifier, your hyperplane has the largest margin, but your training error is 0. And from theoretical, we justify it because the generalization error bound is upper bounded by what? By the training error plus some function of BC dimension of the hyperplane, right? So it's determined at both terms. You cannot, if your BC dimension is too small, it's too large, you don't have a good generalization error bound. At the same time, if your training error is too large, your performance won't be good as well. So we need to find our trade-off. We need to separate as many data points as possible, at the same time maintain a large margin. That's the motivation why we want to add this summation of select variables. So it's important. But problem is that right now, if we intentionally optimize C in this optimization problem, no matter what kind of cases, right, the optimal C is just 0. Meaning that, okay, this effect, right, this trade-off just disappear. Doesn't make sense. Another problem is that how can we choose the best C? So obviously we cannot directly optimize the hyperparameters just like the vanilla model parameters. How can we do that? This is the cross-validation. So the most common used method to select the hyperparameters. So actually, hyperparameters cannot be optimized, and in some cases, in some situations, you even don't know how to optimize it because they do not appear in the objective function. For example, one hyperparameter for perception could be like number of epochs in perception. Number of epochs does not appear in your perception loss. We have shown that perception loss is essentially a maximal function of 0 and minus some product. It does not appear there. How do you optimize it? And other kernel function, other hyperparameters, examples of hyperparameters include like kernel parameters in nonlinear SVM. If you have started your homework before, you are required to implement a nonlinear SVM with Gaussian kernel, right? In Gaussian kernel, we know there is hyperparameter. You need to, I hope that you can use cross-validation to select the best hyperparameter as well. So now let us look at what is cross-validation. So cross-validation is usually conducted by several folds. So the full name is called k-fold cross-validation. And k is usually taken as 5 or 10. That's the most popular values of k, 5-fold or 10-fold. So what does it mean? So first, to conduct cross-validation, right, you need to first prepare a list of candidate parameter values for the hyperparameter. Say, suppose we are trying to find out the best hyperparameter, say, for the SVM, right? So I need to first identify a list of possible values. Say here I just write down according to my own experience, right? 0.1, 0.01, 0.1, 0.5, 1, 5, 10, 100, and 1,000. I just first specify a list of hyperparameter candidates, and then I want to use cross-validation to select the best value. After I select this best value, I got it, right? And I use this hyperparameter to train the model. That's it. And how do we use cross-validation to select value? So first, we split the data into key partitions. So if we choose key to be 5 here, then we randomly partition the data into 5 partitions. And then we choose each partition as the test set. Then use the remaining partitions as the training set. And train the model with the current hyperparameter value. So we start with like say equals to 0.01, right? That's the first value in our range. So to evaluate this performance of this particular hyperparameter value, I just choose say the fifth partition as a test set and use the first 4 partitions as a training set and run. I train the model with this C, and then I give I do the test, I get accuracy, right? The accuracy 5. And similarly, I choose this fourth partition as the training set, and then use the remaining partitions, the test set, and the remaining partitions as the training set. And then I get the second accuracy 4, and then go on until we enumerate all the partitions. Each partition is served as the test set, and the remaining partitions are used for training with a specific hyperparameter value. And I got a list of accuracy values, and then I average these accuracy values. I just add them together and divide it by k. Here it's 5. And this average accuracy is the performance of this specific C value 0.01. Then what's the next step? An idea, what's the next step?
Would you then do the same procedure for your following candidate?
Yes. Yes, exactly. I follow exactly the same procedure, but next time I just change to another C value, say like C equals to 0.1, right? And then I run this 5-fold cross-validation, I get 1 performance, right? And C equals to 0.5, blah, 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 until you enumerate all candidate values. 1,000 you get the performance correspondingly, and then you just compare all the average accuracies, right? Choose the hyperparameter with the largest average accuracy. Then you'll find out the best hyperparameter. This is the 5th step. You repeat for every hyperparameter twice. And after you select the best hyperparameter, then you train the whole data. And this time, you do not split the data anymore. You just train the whole data with this best hyperparameter. You get a model. That's it. Any question about this cross-validation procedure? Okay.
So, is it generally expected that, like, at some point there's like a minimum, if you were to kind of like graph these hyperparameters versus their accuracy?
Oh, yeah. That's a good question. So generally, if you choose an appropriate range of hyperparameter candidates, right, what you can observe is like this. So let me draw a figure for you. So you have a set of discrete set of hyperparameters, right? So suppose like here, right? And for each specific hyperparameter you run K for cross validation, you get average accuracy. So you might have like something like this. This table of curves like this, and you pick up someone in the middle. If you do not see such kind of curve, that usually means your range is not appropriate. You still need to enlarge your range. And also, there are many variants of this cross validation. Say, I can roughly try like 5 candidates, right? And then I pick up, I know, okay, this is the best candidate. The best candidate, but I want to further search more, right? And then I pick up a range surrounding this best candidate. Say I random pick up another 10 times. And then I run cross validation again. And then you choose another. So it's kind of like a 2-level cross validation or even 3-level cross validation.
So they're hyperparameters and we can't really train them on our data, but like, are there like specific factors that we know affect what hyperparameters to use? Like, for instance, like distribution of the data or anything like that, or you just have to guess what range to use?
Yeah, that's a good question. Unfortunately, this usually depends on applications. There's no like a uniform knowledge telling you which specific hyperparameter you should choose. You need to try. Typical procedures like this. You first guess a range, and you run cross-validation, you get a curve like this. If the curve is not like this, that means your range is problematic. You need to try to enlarge your range. And then once you get a curve like this, okay, you decide whether you need to further select the better hyperparameter. You can focus on a more refined range and continue and continue. So the disadvantage of cross-validation, it is computational expensive. Because you can say to evaluate a specific hyperparameter, you need to like train the model like for k times, and prediction and average for k times, right? So it is proportional to the number of number of candidates in the list. But what if you have like 2 hyperparameters? You have like 3 hyperparameters. How many trials you should use? If you have only 1 hyperparameter, okay, maybe I think okay 10 candidates are sufficient for me, right? But now if I have another hyperparameter, I have 2 hyperparameters in total. Then you may think, okay, for fairness, I need to like set 10 candidates for another hyperparameter. Then the combination will correspond to 100 candidates. That's 100 pairs of 2 hyperparameters, right? And then you need to evaluate the cross-validation for 100 times. So you can imagine how expensive it is.
So this is kind of like a bisection method. Are there variants for doing some kind of gradient descent? If you have lots of hyperparameters, you can just kind of move through the space there.
That's a very interesting question. I can tell you you can now say this is some gradient descent, but right now the frontier research, there's a hot topic is called automated machine learning. So what is automated machine learning? They're trying to search hyperparameters by themselves, but not by those grid search. So cross-validation can be considered as kind of grid search, exhausting search. So they're trying to use some global optimization algorithm. Say like a Gaussian process, like genetic algorithms. So in that case, you can consider there is a mapping between the hyperparameter and model performance. Right? So you don't know the function here. But the global optimization algorithm can approximate this function. you can do some continuous approximation of this function, and then you can calculate the gradient to do it. So a typical approach is called the Bayes optimization. Essentially, like I randomly test a set of hyperparameters, and I got all the performance. Then I learn a function between the hyperparameters and the all the performance, and then I search over this function. That is where the gradient comes from. But of course, if you only have 5 possible endpoints, your approximation of function is rough, right? So this kind of trade-off. There is a uncertainty about your function approximation and also the best direction of the function approximation. So it's kind of a trade-off search. And when you try more and more data points, your estimation of this function becomes more and more accurate, and then your search is more and more efficient. And also, there are other types of research like this reinforcement learning to search such kind of hyperparameters. It's a very hot topic. Okay, any questions so far? Everybody's good? Okay. So now we jump to another topic. The artificial neural network. Right? So before we jump into the artificial neural nets, let us first look at the big picture, right? And say why we would like to use artificial neural nets, and what's the motivation for the invention of the artificial neural nets. So far we have learned quite a few learning algorithms, decision trees, data boosting, backing, and least mean square perception and support back machines. And also we introduced the so-called kernel trick to extend linear classifiers to nonlinear classifiers. So we have kernel SVM, which can perform nonlinear SVM and kernel perception. If you have already started your homework 4, you are required to construct this kernel perception algorithm. And through the learning of those algorithms, also get some theoretical view of machine learning, right? What is the concept of overfitting, and what is mystic bound learning? Perception is typical mystic bound learning because we're trying to minimize the number of mistakes during the learning procedure. We even derive an upper bound of the mistakes. And pack learning, sample complexity and generalization error bound, and through the introduction of the SVM, we get to know a more principal framework is called a regularized empirical risk minimization. Right? So empirical risk minimization is trying to just minimize the loss over the training data. That easily leads to the overfitting problem. Right? And the regularized empirical risk minimization is to add one regularizer in your objective function. So a typical example is SVM. Right? We know the objective function SVM consists of 2 components. One is the regularizer, the other is the hinge loss. But the problem is that up to now, we focus on linear classifiers, right? And when we want to do nonlinear classification, we need to borrow the trick called kernel trick. And the kernel trick is not that easy to use. Right? You need to first formulate your model, say in SVM, it's in dual form, right? And say, okay, whether there's some inner product, right? And then I replace the inner product with some kernel function, then I finish the kernel trick. And another problem of kernel trick is that if you use kernel function, most of the time you even don't know what is the underlying nonlinear feature mapping. So for simple Gaussian kernel, you can do that. Okay, this is a beautiful infinite feature mapping. Right? But for other kernels, say if you combine like polynomial kernel with Gaussian kernel and plus linear kernel, you don't know what is the nonlinear feature mapping. Then the question is, can we directly build up a nonlinear classifier without any other tricks? I just want to build up a nonlinear classifier, a nonlinear prediction models from scratch. That's the artificial neural nets. So here's the outline of the of this topic. So we'll first introduce what is a neural network, what's the definition of a neural network, what is the expressiveness of a neural network, and then given a neural network, how can we give the prediction? What's the calculation to give the prediction? Then given the data, how can we train neural network? What is the backpropagation? Backpropagation is kind of words everybody knows, right? But what is backpropagation? Why it's called backpropagation? As we'll say, backpropagation is essentially an application of chain rules and also practical concerns. So neural network is powerful, is useful, and attract too many eyeballs. But when you, in practical applications, when you apply neural networks, you need to avoid many local minimums, like traps. So, okay, so let us first introduce the definition of neural network. So, obvious neural networks is a kind of hypothesis space, right? It's a class of classifiers with special properties. And we'll introduce the structure, the general structure of neural networks, and what's the conclusion about its expressiveness or the complexity. So first, let us start with this linear threshold unit. So we introduced this graphical representation quite long ago. Right? So this actually represents a linear classifier. So input are the original features. So we have 4 features, and also we have a constant feature 1 here. And then those features are transmitted through some edges, right, to an intermediate node. Associated with each edge is a weight. And of course, for this constant feature, the edge connecting, the edge connects to this constant feature is the bias parameter B. And how do we transmit those information to this intermediate node? We multiply the value on one end, right, with the edge weight, and send this product to this node. And after this intermediate node gathers all the inputs, it adds them together, and output this summation. So they will fulfill this dot product, right? So what is dot product? If we treat all the inputs as well as this constant feature as a vector, right? You treat all the edges connected to the same node as a vector, the weights. Then this information transmission and integration procedure is essentially to do the dot product between the 2 vectors. Right? And then this intermediate node sends out this value to this unit. It's called threshold units. Those threshold units, what does it do? Is just apply some thresholding function over it, and it generates output. So mathematically, it just implements this prediction function. So any question about this? Everybody is good? Okay. So to learn the parameters on this graphical structure, right? The parameters include edge weights. We have various algorithms, like perception, SVM, and you can invent your own learning algorithms. Right? So basically, you just minimize some loss. So this is a natural representation of linear classifier. And now the question is, we know, okay, those features directly come from the original data, right? So what if I do not want those features come from the data? We make out some features based from data. Can we do it? I want to get some new features based on existing features. You have some idea?
I guess maybe, well, you could feed the dot products of stat into like the individual xi's, essentially, basically layer multiple these linear classifiers, I guess.
Yes. So you can repeatedly use this structure, right? So now that I want to create new features, why not I use the output of this whole unit, as one feature, and then I just create many such kind of structures. So combine their outputs together as the input of this linear spectral unit. That's what we create new features. So you can see it right now, right? So this is a standard linear classifier represented by this linear threshold unit. And now I want to move those features outside. I want to create some more features. So how do we create it? From the original data, original features, right? I first create one linear threshold unit. And I use the output as the first input of our target unit. So for this specific linear threshold unit, we have a set of attributes: W1, W2, W3, W4, and B. Right? Now, how can we construct a second input for our target unit?
There's still an implicit weight on that first linear input portion. There's still an implicit vector of weights that you're still applying X1 to take the top of it, right?
Yeah, just different weights. Exactly the same structure, but different parameters. So now I want to ask, now I want to create the second feature for our target unit. What should we do? Yeah, we do the same thing again, right? We'll create a second structure, second linear threshold unit, and we use this output as the input for our target unit, right? But for this second structure, remember, we have a different set of attributes. So the attributes here is different, totally different from attributes here. And we can continue to do that, right? And we construct a third structure, a fourth structure, then we get the third input and the fourth input for our target unit. And then we construct a two-layer feed-forward neural network. So what is neural network? Just treat those basic structure as building block. Just combine them together, you get neural network. So this neural network consists of an input layer, which is directly from the original data, and then a hidden layer. So the hidden layer represents the latent features we just get, right? And then the output of the hidden layers are integrated into the output layer and generate the final output. And we call it two-layer feed-forward. We call it feed-forward neural network because the information, the data, right, is transmitted along this way, right? We call this feed-forward. It's fed into the layer, and then the output of the next layer feeds into the next layer. So it's called feed-forward. And two-layer because we don't count like output layer because every neural network must have a output layer. And this and for the output layer, not output layer. This is actually the general definition. So we call this two nodes together as a neuron. So what is a neuron? Neuron receives a set of inputs outside from other neurons, and then integrate them and produce one output. It's called neuron. So basically, in our two-layer feed-forward neural network, we have 5 neurons, right? 1 neuron, 2 neurons, 3, 4, 5. and that's the input here. So here, that is a concrete example of neural network. So now let us formally define the neural networks. So first, neural networks in general is kind of robust approach to approximate real value, discrete value, or vector value functions. So in research, especially in machine learning research, people usually treat artificial neural nets as a kind of very good function approximator. That means it can approximate arbitrary complex functions with very high accuracy. No matter the function is continuous, discontinuous, like very vivid and very wild function, as long as you have enough data, you have enough wide or deep structures, it can approximate very well. That's the empirical conclusion. But there are also some theoretical justification. And also, neural networks are among the most effective general purpose supervised learning algorithms, especially for those problems that are very challenging for traditional machine learning models. Their performance is amazing. It's like image recognition, object recognition, voice recognition. And the core algorithm to train neural networks is called back propagation. We'll see it later. So the invention of neural networks was inspired by the biological science, especially in brain research. So this figure is the first drawing of brain cells in 19th century. Right? So we can say this nervous system in brain is very highly structured. So basically, it consists of neurons, and a neuron is you can consider as kind of special cell, and the structure of neurons like this. Two key components in a neuron. First, dendrite. It's just like tree branches. So you can see that there are multiple branches. Right? Each branch may connect to other neuron. So the function of this dendrite is mainly receiving the information from other neurons. And second component is called axon. So you can consider it as like extension of the outside of the cell. So the function of axons to transmit the signal. So what kind of signal in biological sense they will send is called spikes. So spikes is just like something like this. So among those neurons, you can see different frequencies and different heights of different spikes, and always transmitting. Right? No matter whether you're sleeping or you're working or you're eating. But artificial neural networks are only inspired by it. You can now say they are very similar. So because the artificial neurons have many fundamentally differences among the biological neurons. So serious researcher will never treat artificial neurons as a proxy for the biological neurons. So they're just inspired by the biological neurons. So then, what is the artificial neurons? So abstractively, artificial neurons is just a kind of function. And this function accepts a collection of inputs and then produces output. So it's like dendrite, that's a combination of dendrite and axon, right? Dendrite connects to other neurons, that is inputs, right? Inputs of other neurons. And then axon transmit the output. Mathematically, it can be written as a function, right? You receive many inputs, you generate one output. But how do we generate artificial neurons? We first apply a dot product with weights W and add above speed. That's just the linear function. W transpose x plus b, x are the inputs. And next, we apply a transformation over this linear function. And usually this transformation is nonlinear function. But in our linear threshold units, our transformation function is simply a sine function. Right? So in our case, right? So here, this is the first step. We do the linear classification. Right? This dot product between the weights and the impulse and plus a bias parameter. And then we apply a threshold activation function and we generate output. This is one specific neuron. But there are many other commonly used activation functions. For example, linear unit. So linear units actually do nothing. So what is your input, then what is your output? It's called linear units. And thresholding unit, it is the what we have just discussed, right? And a classical activation function is called sigmoid unit. It's 1 over 1 plus exponential 2 minus z. So what's the output range for sigmoid unit? Any idea? Can anybody tell me what's the output range of sigmoid unit? Bigger than 0?
So between 0 and 1.
Yes, between 0 and 1. Why people invented the sigmoid unit is as a benefit. It can squeeze the output into a range between 0 and 1, so it is easy to deal with. If you try to use other activation function without such kind of a bounding, the problem is that the signal becomes larger and larger after layer by layer, right? And finally it can be huge. It's in a computational perspective, it could easily incur numerical instability. And that's the main motivation people invent the sigmoid unit. But I can tell you the gossip, because of this wide usage of sigmoid unit, the serious neuroscientists never admit the similarity between artificial neurons and the brain neurons. Why? Because they never found similar activation mechanism in human bodies, in animals. And rectify linear. So this is a pretty new activation functions, but extremely popular. I simply take maximum value between 0 and z. Z is the input. And as to why it is so popular, we can discuss later. The major reason is it can avoid an important problem, a severe problem in your neural network is called gradient vanishing. So when you do the gradient descent, use back propagation, you will say, okay, as long as you have more and more layers, and your gradient, the scale of gradients becomes smaller and smaller, and finally it is close to 0. That means your update is equal to not update, because the gradient is close to 0. And tangent H unit is just the tangent H function over Z. So neural network on a whole is a function that converts the inputs from data to output. And the structure of a neural network, if you combine all kinds of building blocks together, can be treated as a directed acyclic graph. And the nodes are organized in layers. And those nodes correspond to neurons. And edge carry out one neuron to another and transmit the information from one neuron to the other. So here's the typical example of the neural network architecture. So we say, okay, the bottom level are the inputs, directly touch the data. And the top layer are the outputs, usually correspond to our prediction. And the layers in the middle are usually called hidden layers. So you can say, okay, each neuron, right, all those are neurons. Each neuron in this layer is connected by all the neurons in the bottom layer. And then the output of this layer, the output of this neuron connects to every node in the upper layer. So you can see here, we observe similar structure, right? This neuron connects to all the bottom neurons, right? And also connects to all the neurons in the upper level. This is called a fully connected neural network. And it's one of the most popular neural networks. And to define a neural network, we need to specify first the structure of this directed axial graph. So how do we specify structure? You need to determine how many nodes do you have in each layer, and how many layers do you have in total. So usually, like for fully connected neural network, people usually choose the same number of nodes in each layer. That's just for convenience. That's not like an obligation. And then you need to specify the activation function on each node. That is, when you collect all the information together, you do the inner product, you get the linear function over that, you apply the nonlinear transformation, right? What specific nonlinear transformation do you choose? And then you need to specify the edge weights. So the structure of the graph, also the type of activation functions are usually determined before we train the neural network. So during the training procedure, we'll only fit the data to estimate the edge weights. Any questions so far? Everybody is good, right? Yeah, edge weights we learned from data. So here is the brief history of neural nets, and it was, I think, the most naive neural net was invented in 1943. It's actually a linear threshold unit, as we just mentioned. It's just a linear classifier. And later, this is a psychologist. He suggested learning rule. He suggested a learning rule that has some physiological plausibility. So that learning rule is similar to like gradient descent. And then Rosenblatt, who invented the perceptron algorithm. And then in 1969, Minsky is a pioneer of artificial intelligence. They studied the neuron from the geometric perspective, and he said, well, there is no future for the perceptron algorithm because it cannot differentiate XOR function. We discussed this before, right? And later, people found out by just piling a set of perceptions, you can do it. And in 2003 until today, that's the resurgence of the artificial neural nets. And during this time, people are trying to build up a much larger neural networks, more deeper, more wider, with GPUs, with computer clusters, and with a huge amount of data to test the performance of the neural networks. So what is the expressiveness of neural networks? As we just mentioned, we just discussed, we know neural networks are very powerful. So how powerful it is? Here's just a simple example. So if I just construct a neural network with a single threshold, linear threshold unit, it corresponds to a linear classifier. So the classification boundary is just a line, right? If in a higher dimensional space, it is just a hyperplane. So now, if I put two layers, and each layer is a linear threshold unit, and what will the classification boundary be? Is it still hyperplane? Any guess? If I stack two linear threshold units, I have a two-layer neural network, right? And each neuron is simply a linear threshold unit, meaning it's like a prediction function for linear classifiers. So is the classification function, is the classification boundary still a hyperplane? Intuitively not, right? But how complex will the classification boundary be, right? So it looks like this. So in general, it corresponds, the geometry looks like a general convex polygons. So this has already had the nonlinear classification boundaries. So you can perform nonlinear classification, no problem. You just combine two linear classifiers together, you stack them together to build up two linear neural networks. And now it can perform nonlinear classification. But this just corresponds to one polygon, right? So now if I stack one more linear threshold unit, meaning that I just put one more linear classifier on top of it. And what will the classification boundary be? It looks like this. So even more complicated, right? So if my classification boundary could be discontinuous. That means that it can be even more expressive. That's just for the linear threshold unit. It's a very simple activation function, because activation function is just a sign function. If you change it to like other activation function like ReLU or sigmoid or tangent H, the classification boundary can be much more complicated. That's where the expressiveness of neural networks come from. So here's the theoretical justification of artificial neural nets. So in 1989, people have proved that any continuous functions can be approximated to arbitrarily accurate using one hidden layer of sigmoid units. So you can say, okay, I just built up a two-layer neural network, and the activation function is simply the sigmoid function. And then I can use this neural network to approximate arbitrary function, as long as this function is continuous. So arbitrary accuracy means that, okay, I want to give you some error level, say less than 10 to minus 6. Then as long as you increase the nodes in that layer and give me enough data, I can always ensure the output of this neural network is close to the target function within this epsilon. This is kind of an amazing conclusion, right? But right now, the new discovery is that people found if you add more and more layers to the neural network, meaning that the neural network gets deeper and deeper, it can approximate the function even better. So how does it mean? How is it mean like even better? It means that, okay, say if I want to approximate a function with just a two-layer, right? I may need like a 10 to 6 number of nodes. It's very wide neural network. That's very costly. But if I try to use deep neural network, then each layer I do not need to use so many nodes. Say I just use like 20 nodes or 50 nodes. I just stack a 10-layer neural network. It can be as good as like 2-layer network, but with 1 million nodes. That's interesting because although theoretically speaking, there's nothing difference between like deep neural network and shallow neural network. But if you want to use shallow neural network to achieve the same accuracy, you need to make this shallow neural network to be very wide. It's too wide to be practical. But if you use deep neural net, you can make your neural net much narrower. You just stack them. That's the discovery in the recent resurgence of the artificial neural nets. But as to why, this is still an open question. There's a few like frontier research for a specific function. They show that, okay, like I use 3 linear neural networks, and the number of nodes I used is much smaller than 2 linear neural networks. That's it. But there's no general theory about that. And here I give you a conclusion. So 2 linear threshold networks can express any Bloom function. So 1 linear threshold network is one linear threshold unit, which is one classification function, a linear classification function. We have shown that it cannot express any Bloom function. Right? For example, the XOR function, it cannot be expressed by a linear classifier. But you just add one more layer. You just stack one more linear classifier on top of it. You can express any Bloom function. And here is the basic dimension of neural network. If your neural network is just a thresholding neural network, just stack all the linear classifiers together, the basic dimension is proportional to the size of the number of edges in the networks multiplying the logarithm size number of edges. So you can know that, right? The flexibility of neural networks depend on the structure. Right? The more edges you have, the more flexible you have. Basic dimension indicates the flexibility of your hypothesis space, right? The larger basic dimension, the more flexible your model is, the more expressive your model is. That's just for the thresholding neural network. If you choose other activation functions, say like sigmoid networks, the basic dimension is even larger because it depends on both the number of nodes and the number of edges. Okay, we have finished the introduction of the general neural networks. So next class we'll start to look at how do we use neural networks to make prediction, how do we train. Okay, I'll stop here.